In today's video, we have the latest trade talk from around the NHL, including talk around the Calgary Flames, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Florida Panthers. We have a signing in Toronto. We also have some big news as well out of Russia. The Ivan Fedotov contract saga will continue, and he may not end up in the NHL this year if the KHL team gets their way. And we also have some possible UFA rumors regarding Jesse Puljujarvi as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a fair bit of NHL news and some trade talk to take a look at here. Some interesting news out of Russia, which is where we'll start in today's video chat. Obviously, the Ivan Fedotov saga continues. Now, of course, just to give you a very quick backstory here, of course, Fedotov signed to be a member of the Philadelphia Flyers last year, was detained in Russia and forced to do a year of military service, was not allowed to leave and go play in North America. So the Philadelphia Flyers bumped his contract. They said it was going to, they would total the deal, it would push forward to the coming season, 23-24. Well, of course, after completing his year of service, everybody expected that he would go play for the Flyers this coming season. His service is done. Should be good, right? Wrong. After completing his service, it was then announced that he signed a KHL contract with CSKA, which was very confusing. So the Flyers ended up formally putting forth a complaint to the IIHF, basically saying he's already under contract here in the NHL. Our contract should be legit and enforced and not the KHL contract. So after reviewing this and looking at information from both sides for, I think it was probably at least 2 or 3 weeks, if not a little bit longer, the IIHF actually announced, which surprised me to be completely honest, that they sided with the Philadelphia Flyers. They deemed his contract legit, and they actually imposed sanctions on the player and the team in Russia. Okay, so you think, okay, the Flyers won their battle here. Fedotov's going to be a Flyer this year, right? Wrong again. So now at this point, the KHL team, CSKA, has officially made comments calling the ruling biased and saying that they've initiated the appeal process, which they're entitled to do. Now, the teams already, they start their season a little bit sooner than the NHL does. They're already kind of in preseason mode, and Fedotov's already appeared in a preseason game for CSKA. And their coach, which was longtime NHL player and former All-Star Sergei Fedorov, who's obviously Russian, famed Russian player, longtime coach over there as well, has made comments as well saying that Fedotov is under contract and he's going to play for them in the domestic championship starting September 1st. So this is certainly not over. The Russian team and Fedorov and the CSKA team certainly feel like they don't really care, and that Fedotov is going to play in Russia this season for them. Like I said, certainly I understand a lot of countries, especially in that part of the world. Russia's not the only one. Other countries in Scandinavia as well have the same sort of rules that they have to conduct a certain amount of military service over a certain period of time. I don't know if the rules are probably all a little bit different throughout each country, but the fact that that wasn't completed and they held him up for a year, okay, as much as you might not have agreed with it, at least you can understand where things are coming from. But now it's just getting crazy. I mean, there's no transfer agreement in place here between these two leagues, but for the most part, each league has respected the other's contracts and you haven't really seen any tampering or any cases of like double signings like this. And if you're the Philadelphia Flyers, who you just took a real chance drafting top Russian superstar prospect Matvei Michkov, are you not a little bit concerned right now? Now, yes, he doesn't play for the exact same team as Fedotov does in Russia, but it's the same league. I mean, they already know he's under contract there for a few years. And you have seen some agreements in place where the Russian player and the team have mutually agreed to terminate early. But still, this is not exactly going to be good for relations between the two leagues, and it's certainly setting a bad precedence, and I don't know what's going to happen here, but I think at this point the Flyers are assuming that he's not coming. I mean, clearly their training camp doesn't start for a few weeks, and I'd be shocked if he's there when things get going, even though they theoretically won their battle with the IHF. I don't know where this is going to go from here. You wouldn't think that an appeal process would turn to be successful in Russia's favor, but crazier things have happened. I guess, I don't know. I really, for the Flyers, I'm more concerned about Michkov in the future than I am about this goaltender. I mean, yes, he's a player that the Flyers wanted and signed. But where things are at, and he's not expected to be like a star game changer. You know what I mean? It's not like they're going to be going from the basement to the top of the league because of this one guy. But a player like Michkov can be, franchise changing and transformational, right? So I don't know. It just concerns me for the future of the relations between the two leagues, and whether or not the Flyers, even though they took a chance and they had great meetings with this kid, and he said he wanted to be a Flyer, all the right things, everything went well. But you got to think some of these players, they might be scared to go against the Russian authority, and you can understand why. So, I just really worry about the future of Russian players and how they're going to be impacted here. But we'll see how things work out in Philadelphia. As I mentioned, we have a signing in Toronto. It's an American Hockey League signing, but an interesting prospect nonetheless. The Leafs have signed ASU player Robert Mastrosimone. He played in ASU last year, had a real solid year, putting up 42 points in 38 games played. Obviously was a teammate of Josh Doan, son of Shane Doan. Obviously another Arizona draft pick. So the ASU program is going to lose both these two guys. Before last season, Mastrosimone played 3 years at BU. He was originally a draft pick of the Red Wings in 2019. Never signed, became a free agent. And the Leafs signed him to an AHL-only deal. He was hoping for like an ELC, which would be a two-way NHL contract, of course, but at least he gets into the pro game and in a good organization, and we'll see where things go. They can elect to sign him if they have the space on the reserve list to change it from an AHL-only deal to an ELC at any time. Or they can wait till it expires and do it for the next year. We'll just have to see where it goes, but certainly an interesting prospect to enter the Leafs organization. Now, on a UFA rumor as well, there looks like there could be some interest in Jesse Puljujarvi by the Washington Capitals. The Washington writer Sammy Silver of the Hockey News is obviously looking at an option here that the Capitals have made it known they want to add a top 6 or top 9 forward, and this might be an easy way for them to do it without having to give up assets in a trade and a contract that wouldn't really cost them a whole lot. Jesse Puljujarvi, you can say what you want about his offensive game. He has struggled to be consistent for sure, but he's got really good defensive metrics. He could be a responsible third-line player. He's got a good size. He can skate. It's the offensive part that's been lacking for the most part in the NHL here. So could be a low risk, high reward type of signing for the Caps. So at this point, I don't know his exact status. I know Puljujarvi certainly ended the season, I believe, with some injuries. I don't know. I assume he's healthy, but we don't know that for certain. He had made comments even last year that he may end up having to go back and play in Europe because the NHL just wasn't working out for him. It's a shame because he looked like he had such talent leading into his draft year, but hasn't really been able to obviously fully put it all together and make it work at the NHL. But we'll see if the Caps and Puljujarvi move forward or if he gets signed by another team. There's certainly some interesting names out there still in the UFA market and some fairly prominent RFAs too that need to be signed as well. At this point, for the RFAs especially, there's no real pressure point just yet. Once we get the beginning of training camp, that'll be a bit of a pressure point. The real bigger mounting pressure point will be when the season starts. So lots of time to get those RFA deals done before they really end up being a risk to lose any time. Onto the trade rumor section of today's video, I'll look at a couple of things. One, there's a new Athletic article, the updated trade bait list deals we could see either before the season or early in the season. A couple of names to watch, which really no big surprise. We've talked about these players before, but it's been a while since we've had any talk or new information on them. But the Florida Panthers and Sam Reinhart. Now, I don't think the Panthers really are out to move Reinhart. I think they like what he brings. He's been a good player for them, but he is making a good amount of money. He's probably going to want more on his next deal, and he's 1 year away from being an unrestricted free agent. So if they don't sign him or trade him, he could be UFA next offseason, he'd be a real attractive option for a lot of teams. He could really cash in. I'm not sure what his intentions are in that respect, if he'd be content to sign an extension in Florida or if he's really looking forward to testing the market. But at the end of the day, the Florida Panthers, like some teams, are really tight up against the cap. They don't have a lot of wiggle room. Having that Bobrovsky $10 million deal in the books is really a big part of that, but they certainly have lots of other guys locked up long term. Obviously, Barkov, Tkachuk come to mind in the forward group. They have some other guys as well that are going to, especially in the back end, need new deals. Like, for example, Brandon Montour and Gustav Forsling are also in the same predicament here. They're pending UFAs, so I expect that, and from what we had heard, Bill Zito's preference was to look after the defense first. So I suspect that the odds of them getting an extension before Reinhart are probably pretty good. And then you get Aaron Ekblad, who can't do an extension yet, but he's 1 year away. And they're already in such a really tight cap situation that even with the increase we're expected to get next summer, it's not enough to keep all these guys. Now, without moving some bodies around or restructuring things, it's going to get real complicated. They're not going to want to lose any of these younger pieces, especially for nothing. But at the same time, the Florida Panthers were the runners-up to the Stanley Cup this year. I'm sure they're going into the season feeling pretty confident about themselves, and I would suspect that they don't really want to subtract any further. They're already starting the year with some injuries, but I would imagine Bill Zito doesn't really want to move Reinhart in a sense that that's a big loss, right? But at the same time, you can't risk losing Reinhart for nothing. And signing him to an extension is going to be very complicated. And if the Florida Panthers are in the running for a playoff spot and hoping to repeat what they did last year, which in theory they should certainly be in the mix again, then I would suspect they're not going to want to subtract as we get closer to the playoffs. So it's going to be a complicated situation. They're not going to want to use all these guys as their own rentals, but at the same time, you have to weigh out the pros and cons here. But Reinhart is a name to watch. If they can't come to terms on an extension, if they can find a right trade where they could bring back a player maybe with term that they feel can give them similar value, but maybe for a cheaper price, which has been the Bill Zito special. He's been real good at finding value and getting players to, on bargain deals because they've been able to basically outplay their contracts. That might be the way he goes about it. But again, he's done well with it so far. Going to get tougher and tougher to keep doing that, of course. In Philly, another name to keep looking out for, as well as Scott Lawton. He had some traction at the deadline. There was some traction around the draft. Nothing came to be. Essentially, the Flyers, I think, are very open to moving him, but they're not going to give him away just for nothing. And they got to get the deal that they're hoping to to satisfy what they want here. A team to watch, I think, that makes a lot of sense, and I've read about it in an article here, is Calgary and Minnesota were the names mentioned in the article I was reading about Lawton today. But the Flames, to me, do make a ton of sense because they have two centers in Lindholm and Backlund with uncertain futures, and if we do see them move one of those guys, or possibly end up moving both of them, which is we don't know yet, which we're going to talk about the Flames here in a minute, then he could certainly come in and be a decent replacement. Nazem Kadri, of course, is still there as a centerman. He may move up to be the number one center if Lindholm is not in the picture. I mean, they've offered reportedly a hefty contract to Lindholm. He's rejected it so far, has not signed. Backlund doesn't appear ready to sign either. The last we heard about Backlund was that he did not really... he didn't say he would never sign, that he was done and wanted to move on. He just said he didn't want to sign before the season. He sounds like the only way he's going to sign an extension is he wants to see how the season goes first. So towards the end of the year or an early part of the offseason, if he were to stay, that sounds like would be when he would do it. And if the Flames, depending on how the year goes, they may not be able to wait that long, and they may move on from him. But the article, which we'll get into here in the Flames here in just a moment, with Lawton, he could step into Calgary and be a good piece, to play in behind Kadri as a 2-3 guy, right? So depending on how things go there, and what the Flames are doing, Lawton could come in as a piece to kind of replace what they might lose if they don't get a centerman back in a trade. But there was also a Sportsnet article written by Pat Steinberg on the Flames, which I want to take a look at. It was like a mailbag type article. So I looked at that, and obviously which we already talked about Hanifin yesterday, he did touch on him as well. Said sort of the same things that we already talked about, essentially saying that the main two teams that stick out to him as being contenders for Hanifin was Buffalo, and he also mentioned Detroit. Detroit's acquired so many defensemen this year. I don't know that makes... They do have the space, and he would be an upgrade over some of the guys they have, but they've got so many new guys, I'm not sure who they'd want to move, but the Sabres, to me, make a ton of sense. We'll see if that comes to be, but he did touch on Backlund, essentially, and as well as Lindholm. And when it comes to Backlund, he said the main reason why we haven't really seen a trade is that the offers have been quite soft. There's been interest in Backlund, no doubt, and he's coming off a good season, but he's got 1 year left on his deal, obviously a bit older. Then teams may not want to trade for him without an extension, which may not be something that he really wants to do just yet, and therefore they're probably lowballing the offers. If he's coming in as a rental, they're not going to offer as much, right? That just makes sense, and that's how things typically go. So with the offers being soft, he's, in his opinion, which I don't disagree with, he said of all the guys they have, the one player that they could take the chance with and let it ride would be Backlund. He's been part of the organization since he was drafted. It's been like 15 years, right? So it's not like they haven't gotten a good long-term valued relationship with him. If he ends up walking next season as a UFA, well, at least that's one player you could be like, okay, thank him for his time and contributions to the organization, and you don't feel so bad. If you're not going to get much on return, if the offers aren't there, you have to keep him. Now, Lindholm's a completely different story. He's younger, and he's a little bit more offensively gifted, so he plays higher in the lineup, and he's really good two-way centerman as well. So clearly, you can't let him go for nothing. So Lindholm, they've already offered the moon to him on a contract extension. He has yet to show interest in signing it. You have to think that's a major red flag, major concern for the team and Craig Conroy. And certainly, again, the offers haven't been there. Obviously, if they got a huge offer that they were happy with, they might have proceeded, right? But Lindholm is a guy that I think they feel like they would need to trade if they feel like they can't keep him. Or Backlund, they might just let it play out if the offers just aren't there. When it comes to Dustin Wolf and Danny Vladar, there's obviously a lot of people expected Vladar to be moved because Wolf has got nothing left to accomplish at the AHL, and he's a well-accomplished goalie, back-to-back Goalie of the Year awards, and he deserves to be in the NHL, but he still does not require waivers. They could put him there if they need to for cap purposes, or they can carry 3 goalies and they can take their time until they find a deal that makes sense for Vladar. I honestly think by the time you get through training camps in the first part of the season, there's bound to be a few glaring holes in goaltending around the NHL, and things will open up a little bit on that market to see a few goalies that are in the mix move around. But right now when it comes to the Flames, I think Hanifin's their biggest trade chip. Lindholm, though, is the one that they can't let get away for nothing, and Backlund and Vladar may be there a little bit longer. They're more likely, I think, to complete the, at least either complete the season or be there for a longer part of it. But I don't know. I don't think they can go too long on Lindholm without pulling the trigger here if he's not going to sign. If they lost him and Backlund, or after losing Gaudreau last year, that would be an absolute disaster. So I just don't think Craig Conroy can go down that road and really take the chance. But let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.